Hi everyone, welcome to the second World Workplace Wellbeing Online Summit hosted by the Global Wellness Institute. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Joana Kibas. I'm a member of the Workplace Wellbeing Initiative and I will moderate this session. Today we are talking about joy, unlocking effortless joy with Eileen Benwitt and Nair. Just a quick disclaimer before we kick off. We are recording this session, and as soon as possible, you will receive an email with the links of every session. And this video will be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well. You can write your questions on the chat anytime, and at the end of the session, I will turn it over to our presenters. So please feel free to use the chat window to post your questions anytime. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Eileen Benwitt, founder of With and Wonder, who draws on decades of human-centered leadership in the marketing and communications sector, where she tirelessly advocated for personal healing and holistic well-being. As a multi-certified holistic wellness and executive coach, Eileen partners with her clients to foster deep connections and nurture their innate gifts, all in the pursuit of enhanced well-being. Recently, Eileen has also taken on a pivotal role as a key ambassador at Lila Life, actively championing those striving to harmonize a life of success and joy, where having to compromise one for the other is an acceptable norm. Hi, Eileen. Thank you for joining us today with Nair.
Hi, Joanna. It's so nice to see you. Thank you for the intro and thank you for hosting us tonight. And nice to see you, Hari. Welcome. I know it's super early for you, so thank you for joining us so early. I'm so excited to have the conversation with you. So let's start with a formal introduction. Hari Nair is founder of Lila Life, is an Indic well-being thinker and a compelling communicator. Over the last decade, Hari has consciously focused on issues that affect modern well-being. He has done deep research on wide-ranging aspects of Indic civilization that have a bearing on well-being in today's world. In addition, Hari has also been a successful entrepreneur and management consultant. Previously, Hari was the host of a video series, Conversations with Hari, where he had fascinating conversations with celebrities on travel and the journey of life. I was lucky enough to be introduced to both Hari and his co-founder Nishant about a year ago, thinking that it was just a networking opportunity. We were going to brainstorm ideas, talk about well-being in the corporate space. In fact, as you know, I left my holiday to come and meet you because I had a sneaky suspicion that this was going to be a very special and inspiring conversation. And exactly that's what happened. I'm captivated by your vision. And ever since, I've been along for the journey, and it's been a great one at that. And here we are a year later. So with that, let's get started, Hari. If you could, share with us about your background. What is Indic well-being all about? And what role do you see it playing in the wellness marketplace?
Good morning, Eileen, and thanks a lot for that wonderful introduction. I know it's kind of late for you there in New York City. So thanks for taking the time out and having me here today. Namaste, everybody. It's early morning here in where I am in the southern end of India, and look forward to a short conversation today. Coming to your question, Eileen, my journey. So let me just give you a very quick background where I come from. Professionally, as you said in the introduction, I've done a stint as a management consultant, which was 15 years of being a management consultant. In that role, what I did was really help build some of the largest infrastructure projects in India. And as part of that process, interacted with people, very successful professionals from across the world, colleagues from the consulting firm that I used to work in, from different offices across the world, investors from so many different parts of the world, and so on and so forth. So one sort of came across very many interesting people, highly successful, sort of all trying to navigate the idea of building these very large mega projects in a new market for a lot of them, and a challenging market for almost everybody. So that's what I did for the first 15 years of my professional career. Then I completely switched You kind of get to a place, you become a partner, you do the usual, you climb the ladder, so to speak. And there was a point and I said, I want to do something different. So I became an internet entrepreneur in India at a time when we had kind of very little of internet or entrepreneurship. And that was another incredible journey where I again met a whole lot of successful people. For example, investors. One of my main investors was a hedge fund out of New York City. And so I was building the first travel community in India, and I was dealing with, again, people from across the world, highly successful. The reason I talk about, people from across the world and successful is because I think it then played into the problem that I stumbled upon as part of my 30-year professional career, which is the challenge of highly successful people. It's a peculiar challenge for highly successful people, which is that they get success, they get material success, financial success, professional success, social success, and then they still feel a lack in themselves. There's something missing. And so different people define it in different ways. Some people say, I'm not happy. Some people say, I'm not contented. Some people say, I have a hole in the heart if they are slightly poetic. And I've seen poetic hedge fund managers as well. So they do exist. And so, so people say it in different ways. And what was curious to me was how pervasive it was at one level and how I didn't seem to have. And that's actually the place from which I started getting very curious about this thing, because I just didn't seem to have that problem. And so I went on a journey of trying to find out what is it that led to me not having this problem. And then I realized somewhere along the way that it was because of the experience of growing up that I had. And so I'm going to take 30 seconds. And okay, carry on. Then we'll talk about that.
I just have a question about that. Because of your journeys, a lot of your time was spent in India, right? Like you said, the first 15 years.
Yeah.
And so are you making a connection with your experience based on your sort of your heritage and your background? Did it vary by country when you started to spend time outside of India? Was that part of the problem or the realization?
Actually not. That's an interesting thing. So I realized that there is this category of successful modern professional that cuts across the world. They sit actually in India as well, in the big cities of India where I was working. And they would be in New York, and they would be, in Brazil, and they would be all across. And I came across people from Australia and from all across. And so one found this problem to be sort of ubiquitous, but within that category of people all across. So what I realized was it seems to have been a problem of success and modernity coming together, or modern success. Let me put it that way. And it seems to be a unique facet of modern success. And so that was what I kind of discovered. And so to complete the other part of that is really saying that, and because I diagnosed it to how I had the chance to grow up, I sort of went back and explored that and examined that.
Yeah, so
let me
away. I don't understand. They sound gigantic. You'd be like a schnurrer if you said you'd taken them all. And
what is happening?
No idea.
Okay, that was odd. Maybe whoever's on, if you guys everybody could just mute their sound, would be great. Go ahead.
Right. Harry. So yeah, no worries. So so let me take like a 20-30 seconds on that experience of growing up, right? So I grew up in a family that in a small town in India, in the southern end of India, where I had a family that was a kind of strange combination of, on one side, very international, very forward-looking, very what you would call modern, and on the other side, very rooted in the Indian, traditional Indian thing, where things like yoga and meditation and chanting and mantras and food of a certain kind and art and all of that was just what we did. It did not have names, and it did not have words, and it did not have fancy descriptions, but it was just what you did. And at the same time, as I was saying, we had a very international outlook. My grandfather was one of the first people in India to go, for example, abroad to Oxford in this particular case to study and so on. So there was this strange combination. So when I look back at saying, why is it that I didn't have that problem? I diagnosed it back to saying that I have a view of the world that comes from that experience of growing up, which is distinctly, I realized, different from what modernity kind of tends to give you. And I have a way of living my day-to-day life, also quite different from what modernity sort of suggests is the best way to live life. So both the sort of worldview as well as the daily life were different in some important ways. And I think that played a big role in, I think, me not having that. And so that really was the genesis of this whole thing.
Could you narrow in a little bit more specifically, like what is it that set your experience apart from what you were seeing from, let's say, your peers?
So and so that's exactly what I was trying to narrow down in the next 10 years of my experience with this thing, right? Saying I could now see that some things were different. I had a view different, and as I said, I was doing stuff differently. So I said, let me try to understand what is it that truly was different. Other than what I could see at a superficial level. So I went on a 10-year journey of going deep into all of the elements of Indic civilization that seemed to have crept into my life without me realizing. In a more structured way, I went into that. And I realized that there were two or three profoundly different things that I had imbibed. One is a worldview of which is very different, in terms of saying that your life is, in the Indic system, the worldview of life is that, and of well-being, is that you are in a dance. The world is in a dance of its own, of energy, and the purpose of life, or the objective of being in well-being, is to syncopate your, is to make sure that your life and the dance of your life is in tune with the life, the larger dance around you. Now, what I mean by this is not in specific terms, but in the mental model with which you look at life, which means that everything else around you becomes suddenly relevant to the extent that they're complementary in dancing with you. They're not adversarial. They're not something you have to overcome. They're not somebody that has a control on you. You're dancing together. And so as soon as you see that in your head, you suddenly see the world in a very different way. And I'm trying to abstract it to its sort of primary place. Obviously, it manifests in many ways. So that was one, but also in many of the daily routines of life, where the big difference was that I saw everything through what Indic suggests is that you see everything through what I would call a holistic lens, which means that don't see it in, separately as something that affects your body or affects your mind or affects your spirit or affects your emotions. See everything you do as having a role in all of those. And so that holistic idea of what you do on a daily basis. So the food you eat has a tremendous impact on emotion, has a tremendous impact on spirit, the notion of satiation, and so on and so forth. All these things are the differences, and there are a bunch of differences. So so those are. But I'm trying to give you the very sort of essence of those differences. One is the worldview of this dance, and the other is living in a holistic.
So for those that haven't had your experience and the exposure that you've had, the idea of this dance and the holistic spirit as you're describing, which I think makes a lot of sense. And I think there's a trend right now, the word holistic and well-being and wellness seems to be used interchangeably. What advice do you have, or what suggestions do you have for people who are seeking and they want to understand this, and what steps, what can they do to start to adopt, embrace, learn about what you're talking about? Because for some it might be foreign, and depending upon what climate you're coming from or where you are globally. I know in the US we're very sort of hardwired, we're very transactional, we're sort of alpha in a lot of ways. How do you help sort of start to let that seep in?
So there are 2 points in this, right? So one is you need to get comfortable with the core sort of framework that underlies all of this, right? So what I have done over the last 10 years is to actually take all of this knowledge that's available in different parts of the Indic system and try to create a simple framework that's applicable for modernity. So one of the things that would be useful for most people is to start to absorb that framework. I call that the 5x5 framework, which is basically saying there are 5 broad areas that you need to think about. And I sort of, the 5 areas are: eat right, think calm, rejoice in art, bring art into your life,
Right.
live on land, which is bring nature into your life. And the last one is smile, and I actually mean smile. And the 3 components of that smile are personal care and fitness, which is basically looking good. And the second is intimacy, which is another big area of challenge for human beings today, both at a physical intimacy level as an emotional intimacy level. And the last is spirituality. So these 3 together, in a sense, combine to have smile. So these 5 areas are really the pillars around which we can look at it. So the first thing to do is to absorb the framework and get a sense of what you're dealing with here and what you should focus on as step 1. The step 2 that is useful is what Indic knowledge tells you is that the way you have to use this framework is to find the journey that is specifically relevant for you as a person, as distinct from every other person on the planet. The journey is unique to you because you are unique. The composition, the totality of what you are as a human being is different from everybody else. And so therefore, the important step for you to go on the journey, before you go on the journey, is to know who you are. What kind of a person am I? Because once I know that, I have a good sense of the nature of the journey or the specific route that I have to take. I'm always reminded of this, just as an aside, you know this story of Alice in Wonderland, right? So Alice goes through the looking glass and goes inside, and then she's walking down the road, and she comes to a fork on the road. And there is on a tree, there is a cat, Cheshire Cat, a famous character in Alice in Wonderland, sitting there. And so Alice doesn't know, should I go this way, should I go this way? So Alice asks the cat, which way should I go? And the cat gives an answer, which according to me is actually one of the most philosophical statements made by man. The cat says, depends on where you want to get to. And it's a very simple thing, but when you think about it, it's profound. So this idea of knowing yourself is really to enable you to have a better sense of where you want to get to. Because knowing yourself is the starting point of knowing where you want to get to. And so those are the 2 things. You understand the framework and figure out yourself, then you can get the journey in place.
Yeah, I love that. I think it makes a lot of sense, and the personalization of it, because what's going to work for me or resonate for me is not going to resonate for you. And so I see some challenges here in this. And one is that the marketplace is so saturated right now with companies and apps and conversations around wellness and well-being, and specifically the impact that the influencer market is having out there, particularly in the wellness space. It seems that everybody's an expert. So what advice do you have for those that are really committed to well-being and their own personal betterment? I love what you're talking about in terms of the personalization and really understanding that, and then finding the context for those experiences to support you. But we're inundated. Social media is inundating us with so many experts who aren't really experts. So can you talk a little bit about how do we cut through all of this to get to the real core benefit for ourselves personally?
Sure. I think it's actually one of the core challenges in modernity, and it's not actually only about well-being and wellness. This challenge of choice is a more profoundly, so you walk into any supermarket in the world today, and if you want to buy whatever detergent, or you want to buy diapers for kids or whatever, right? So you have 1,000 choices, and how do you sort of, what really am I? What do I need? So the answer always is bring the control back inside to yourself. Don't give away the control of what your well-being ought to be to the world. Don't give it away to influencers. Don't give it away to companies. Take the control into your hands. is a simple proposition. And how do you do that? You
Yes,
do that by
how do you do
first,
that?
exactly. And how do you do that? By first asking yourself the most basic question. For the kind of person I am and the context of the life that I lead, what is well-being for me? And two, if this is well-being for me, what are the 2 or 3 things that I need today at this point to move forward on that path of well-being? The answers to these 2 questions will give you so much clarity, because choice is not a problem. Your lack of clarity about what you want is what makes choice a problem. Choice by itself is not a problem. Your clarity is what determines whether it's a problem or it's a benefit. And so bring the clarity to yourself. And what Leader Life and what I truly believe I want to bring to people around is to help them find that clarity. Once they have that clarity, the rest follows. This huge confusion and this challenge and this worry and this Peloton bike and keto diet and everything else, all of that becomes wonderful when you know that this is what I want, and now I have all these things to choose from, but now I have a clear path to say this, and forget about everything else.
Right.
That's what you do.
It sounds really smart and should be easy, but it isn't so easy, right? It's complicated. And when you throw in a society that seeks the quick fix and immediate gratification, and I'm thinking of the Ozempic sort of, I don't want to call it an epidemic because it's absolutely an important product that is serving a need. So the weight loss space is definitely an example, but also the surgence of biohacking. And so that's just another layer of choice that I'm finding is sort of saturating the marketplace, that just makes what you're suggesting, it's hard to do.
So let's deconstruct this problem, right? So very often when we talk about quick fix, the important word to remember in that is not quick, but fix. And this is an important one because, and I'll tell you why that is. See, when we're talking about a lot of things relating to human well-being, we default to a mental model that comes from modern medicine, which is, I have a problem, I need to solve it. And you're looking for the intervention to solve that problem. That's what you're looking for. And the faster, the better, by definition, right? I've got a heart disease. I want to solve it, and faster, the better. So I'm not questioning that, but I'm questioning the fact that when you think about well-being, you only think about the fix. You don't think about the next question, which is the bigger question, saying, okay, I have a weight gain problem, let me fix it. But fundamentally, the conditions that led me to have the problem in the first place is the problem, or is the context that I need to address more deeply. Because that's what's going to make sure that I don't have similar problems in the future, and so on and so forth. And so this notion that I need to go and change the fundamentals of some of the things that I do in life is well-being. The rest is all actually wellness or healthcare, or it's problem, problem, intervention, problem, intervention, problem, intervention. But what you now need, in addition to that, is a step back and say, okay, that's all fine, I'll keep doing that. But I need to go back and look at the architecture of my own life. And it sounds grand, but it actually can be a few small things, so that I don't get into these things in the future. And that's actually the path of it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we are a bit of a fix-it culture, for sure. I want to switch gears for a quick second, and I want to share some data with you, and get your reaction. So McKinsey recently did a Future of Wellness survey earlier this year, stated that the global wellness marketplace in 2022 was worth $5.6 trillion, and it estimates it's rising to $8.7 trillion by 2027. They also found that Generation Z and millennials are now purchasing more wellness products and services than any other generation. The World Health Organization estimates 12 billion working days are lost every year due to depression and anxiety. It's about a $12 trillion lost in productivity. The World Happiness Summit just had their 7th annual summit in London earlier this year, talking about the benefits and the science of happiness. The wellness tourism is now a $650 billion industry, according to a study that the Global Wellness Institute issued. Research and Markets estimates that the medical spa industry was a $16.5 billion industry in 2023, and it's expected to soar to $45 billion by 2030. That's pretty staggering numbers. So it's an opportunity. Does it indicate that there's a crisis, like a human crisis of some sort? And what role does Indic knowledge? How can Indic knowledge and how could Leela Life influence this?
Oh, I absolutely think there is a crisis. And the crisis is twofold. One, it's a crisis of unprecedented prosperity.
Prosperity.
The world, prosperity, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, never in human history has there been such a widespread relative prosperity as we have today across the world. I mean, there are, in the last few years, India as a country has lifted so many hundred millions of people from outside, from absolute poverty to a completely different place, and that's reflective of a general improvement in lives of people across the world, and that's going to soon happen in parts of Africa and so on. So there's prosperity across the board, right? So that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is that along with that comes technological and other change that has never been, faster than what we have today. Change is extraordinarily, it's just exploding at a pace that most human beings are finding it difficult to sort of handle. Yeah. So extraordinary prosperity on one side, exploding change on the other side is a very difficult, it has created a place which I think is a crisis. And that crisis is what we are all trying to see through. And we use different words to talk about it as well-being, wellness, and happiness, and so on and so forth. But they all point to one sort of a place of crisis. And therefore, yeah, so I do believe that there is a reason why this is happening. And it's a reason, and it's something that we all need to take quite seriously. Both at an individual level for ourselves and, at a group level, as countries and populations and so on. So that's one side. So I do believe it's a crisis. Now, what Leela Life is trying to do is to point out, say, for example, let me take the second problem, the problem of change. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are trying to address change by saying, can I anticipate what change is coming? Can I prepare myself for the change that's coming? So AI is coming along. How is my job going to be affected? What can I do? Can I reskill myself? They're all legitimate questions. But at the end of the day, we must understand that change is going to be faster and come from places that we cannot quickly necessarily envisage today. So this proposition saying, I'm going to try and sort of imagine what the future is going to be and prepare myself for that is actually not going to work. The only thing that's going to work for us is change is going to happen. It's probably going to be dramatic. Therefore, how can I prepare myself as a human being with human capacities that can ride out any change that comes? That's the important thing. We've got to build out our capacities. The answer lies inside, not outside. And so we've got to go back and say, how can we build our capacities, human capacities, such that whatever change comes along, we are in a state of joy. And that's the proposition that Indic Wellbeing promises, and that's the proposition that Leela Life wants to bring as a practical way to make that happen. So Leela Life has actually a bunch of steps that you can do along with us that will take you on that journey very specifically, which includes understanding who you are, then figuring out what of the framework of Indic Wellbeing knowledge applies to you, and then actually going down the path of integrating all that into your life. The promise is that eventually you will get to a place where you have that internal capacity, human capacity, that allows you to enjoy the change, not get inundated and sort of get drowned in the change. So that's what we are hoping to do.
And that connects to what you were saying earlier about, when we're so inundated with choice and staying true to who we are, And so that we can navigate whatever comes our way, because we're sort of rooted and grounded in I'll use words that you've used before, your innate qualities, but we first have to know what they are in order to build the capacity and the context around that, so that we have that sort of solid footing to navigate what's coming, because it keeps coming. Like, it's not going to stop.
Right. Now, it's just going to get faster and more furious, I would imagine.
Can you talk about because I know a lot of what you're talking about is joyful living and a joyful life. We also hear a lot about happiness. What's the difference between happiness and joy? And what role do how do they play together?
No, in the Indic knowledge systems, the word joy has a very specific place. It has a specific meaning. And the big difference between joy and, let's say, happiness, for example, happiness is an emotion. So you are happy, then you are maybe unhappy, then you're kind of okay, and then you again unhappy, and then you become happy. And so what does it tell you? That happiness is an emotion, and like all emotions, it is transient. It comes and it goes. So it just comes and it goes, and that's the nature of the thing. Joy in the Indic context is not an emotion. Unlike in modernity, where when we talk of joy, we think, it's an emotion. It's not. In the Indic system, it's not an emotion. It's a state. So you are in a state of joy, which means that you're not. It doesn't come and it doesn't go. You are in that state. So I need to explain what does Indic knowledge mean when it says joy. The context is a little different. In the Indic system, joy means that irrespective of what happens in your life on a day-to-day basis, so today is a good day, today is a bad day, something good has happened, something challenging has come about, whatever. Irrespective of that, you look at life with a deep intention to engage with life. You don't shy away from life. You don't say, oh, today's a tricky day, I'm going to, I don't pull back from life. No, you're as engaged with life when you see a challenging day as when you see a wonderful day. And that state that allows you to be fully engaged with life is the state of joy in the Indic system. And it's a profound idea, because when you think about it, because why does Indic Wellbeing say that? Because Indic Wellbeing says that you can never achieve a situation where there is no challenge. It's the nature of life that there will always be challenges, and there'll be good days and bad days, and things will happen. It's many trillions of variables of the world playing. So you can't control that. You needn't control that. What you need to have is the internal capacity to, go to life with that desire to engage. And so that's joy. And so I think Indic Wellbeing tells you that try to inculcate this joy in your life. And so I think that's an important starting point for people who are looking to go on this journey.
It's such an important difference, and certainly in the States, that's not a word that you hear a lot at all.
Yeah.
You do hear about happiness, or you hear about the opposite of happiness, depression, anxiety, and all the inverse of that, but you really don't hear much about it. So it sounds like Leader Life has a huge opportunity to certainly educate, as you're starting to do here, what the difference is, because I think those are two words, like wellness and well-being, are used interchangeably. I think joy and happiness are probably used in the same way, but you've given a very specific and really grounding in what those differences are. And just to cement us a bit further, is it also fair to say that regardless of the ups and downs, right? Because we're going to have those ups and downs. We're not always going to be happy, right? We're going to be sad. We're going to be angry, a range of emotions. You still can be joyful even in your worst state. Is that what you're proposing?
Correct. And is not only you can be, the Indic system actually goes on further to say that it is not only you can be, but it is actually your natural state. And the only reason that you're not in that natural state is out of a little bit of ignorance of what you need to do. That's it. It's your natural state of a human being. And so, yeah, indeed, joy is there for the taking. All we have to do is find our path.
So what suggestions do you have for those that this concept is new both the concept of joy as well as the Indic well-being sort of approach. What suggestions do you have for people?
I think the starting point in all these instances is to find out who you are. What
You
kind
said
of a
the innate
person am I?
quality.
That's a central point because without that knowledge, you have no locus of seeing the world, of observing things and making decisions. So that's very important. Now, when I say that, lots of people can turn around and say, I do know, and that's a fair point. But what Indic system has proposed is saying that the reason you need to go through a structured process for that is because the innate qualities that make up you, the person, is actually given to you almost at the time that you were created. At the time that you came into this world, you came in with a set of innate qualities. And as you go through the journey of life, you acquire lots of things because of the experiences. We know in kindergarten we went to school and the teacher patted us on the back because we did this right. And so then we've absorbed that is good. And then we've kind of started to put that into ourselves as us, as one facet of us. But that's not us necessarily, because what we came with is what is ours. So there is a process for us to go back and discover what we see today is actually our innate qualities and what are things that we picked up in a transient kind of way, which we will lose. You live long enough and those things will change again. So I think it's very important to understand innate qualities, because innate qualities are what make us what we are. So that process is something that I would recommend everybody go through. And just to complete that idea, in the Leela Life process, what I try to do is to sort of combine that process of looking at innate qualities and then map it to today's context of your life. Right. So now you know two things. These are my innate qualities, but this is the context of my life. And therefore, now when you put these two together, you can say, which of my innate qualities are not really playing out well in the way I live my life today? And that is an important insight, because now you know what is the genesis of the underlying misalignment that might be causing all the other sort of the hole in the heart that we talked about, right? So that is very important. So know your innate qualities, map them to the context of your life, and find out where your misalignments are. And once you have this in place, honestly, the journey is actually both easy and very joyful.
Sounds good. It sounds very optimistic and promising. So with that, Hari, can you share with us what your innate qualities are and some examples of how you honor your joyful life?
That's a very good question. And I'll take one example, right? So there are two examples. Let me take one. Of course, is that I was born with a very high. I realized that curiosity was a big part of my makeup as the innate quality that I came with. So, and this was an interesting problem, because when I went to the professional world, I realized that there are two things that are valued in the modern professional world. One is specialization, and the other is experience, right? So specialization means, and the second is experience, right? So now specialization refers to a small body of knowledge that you become, really, really familiar with. And experience means you've known that for a long period of time. And this is really, somewhere along the line, I could do this, but I was not in my happy place doing it. Mm-hmm. And so I struggled with it till I found out that, this is not the innate me. And the reason it's not the innate me was because it conflicted with my curiosity that wanted to explore many things in the world. And the answer that I finally came up with to say that, but I will not have a career with multiple jobs. I will actually have multiple careers within my lifespan. And so sequentially, I will get into completely new things that enable me to play my curiosity out and to get value and then provide value to people out there by playing on a core quality of mine, which is curiosity. So it took me some time, and it was a journey that I went through. And then that's what it is. That's one example. The other example is really, which is that I've kind of figured out, and this is more than just a quality, it's also an impact of the experience of this approach, which is saying that all change that comes at you, you don't have to react. You don't have to jump up and sort of react to everything that's in front of you. So, for example, I give you an example. I think a lot of personal and professional technology is that comes at us. We have to watch it carefully. For example, we all have our calendars, the online calendar that, Google Calendar and so on, that we often tend to become slaves of the calendar. The calendar is not our tool, but we are tools of the calendar, because we expose the calendar to everybody. Everybody is putting in their stuff into the calendar. Now there are tools on top of that calendar, Calendly and other things that, allow. I have taken a conscious decision that I will not allow that to happen, not because I'm anti-technology, but because I'm careful in the degree of space I allow technologies to operate in my life. So so what I'm trying to tell you is it's an example of a conscious decision. You can take any decision. The decision is related to you as a person. So there's no one right decision. But the fact that you look at that before you go into it, and you don't take the prevailing aesthetic and the mood of the world as given to you, is the lesson I learned from all of this, which I truly treasure.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because it's such a relevant and timely example, because everybody's doing it now, right? It's another example of making the choices, right? Because we're inundated with the technology in the same way that we're inundated in the social media space. So then how do you manage your time? Just as a practical matter, how do you manage your time? It seems such an efficient tool.
So I have blocks. And I have blocks, and in those blocks I'm ready. So I have a certain number of hours in the day which is kept for my reading, and nothing sort of gets in the way of that. There are a certain number of hours kept for just family. There's a certain number of hours kept for Leela life, and I'm very happy with the blocks of time that I'm able to keep separately, and they all seamlessly sort of play into each other. Of course, I realized, but yeah, that's how I do it. I mean, I don't think there's only one way to do it, but that's how I do it.
Yeah. So with technology, I have to ask one question on AI. And what role will AI have on your vision? The Leela life vision, which is the sense of joy and the way you've described it, because it's everywhere.
Yeah. So I think there are two things. Let me come to and you can look at it from a demand side and a supply side, because I've kept thinking about this problem. So let me look at the supply side, but I'll come to the more interesting on the demand side. The supply side is really saying that as a provider of the solution, AI, we deal with knowledge. What does Leela Life deal with? We deal with knowledge, the powerful Indic underlying ancient knowledge that has passed on 5,000 plus years. And to sift carefully within that amazing knowledge to find what is relevant for modernity. So that's what we do. Now, can AI play a role in that? Enormously. It's an extraordinary, progress of technology, and we believe that over time, and we're already taking some steps towards that, to actually bring the full power of AI to this extraordinary, very challenging task of actually sort of trawling this huge corpus of knowledge. So that's on what I call the supply side. So we're able to bring that and give that to the world, supply that to the world. Let's talk about the demand side, which is saying, what does it do to people? Just all of us. What does AI do? And I think AI is going to, if we believe that whatever technology we have worked with so far has made it tough for us, we're talking about calendars and stuff like that, AI is going to blow all of that out of the water. AI is going to be such a profound change that we will find increasingly so difficult to understand, that I think its impact on us will be, if we are not ready for it, I think we are going to be in significant trouble. But on the other hand, as individual human beings, if we are ready for change in general, we're going to truly enjoy that change, because it's actually going to liberate us. We don't have to do mundane jobs. We can do the most interesting things that human beings can potentially do. So the choice is ours, but I think it's going to be a tough period before human beings figure that out and say which is the path to go. So I think it's going to be really challenging for the next few years.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious if you have any advice for those people who might be change adverse. How do you embrace change?
By improving your capacity, so that you don't fear change, but you start to enjoy change. Joy is that it's all about capacity. You build the see it change or anything else for that matter is a problem only if you believe you don't have the capacity to control it or handle it or manage it, and that it will then start to affect you. Right? That's the fear. On the other hand, if you come to the conclusion that, yeah, I mean, I have the capacity to manage it, then actually it all, let me give you a mental model of this, right? So there are two ways. So there's this very fast flowing, furiously flowing river that you've got to swim across. How do you do it? You have two choices. You can swim across like this straight. You're fighting the current, you're fighting the every eddy, it's not a happy thing to do, to cross, and you probably won't cross well, and if you do cross well, there's nothing much to do once you get there, because all your energy and your being has been lost in getting to the other bank. Think of the same thing slightly differently. You don't cross straight like this, but you go with the current, but gradually keep moving to the other side. You're not fighting the current, you're playing with the current, you're enjoying the current. Why? Because you have you can see where it's going, you have the capacity to make those small changes, you work with it, not against it. You reach the other end, the journey has been good because you've actually looked around and you've seen the scenery go by, and there was a deer here and there was a moose there and there was a bear there and so on. And then you got to the other end. There's a huge difference, and it's as simple as that.
Oh, if it's only that simple, but it's a good it's a good example, and it's like what you do when you're stuck at the beach and you're stuck in a riptide. It's exactly what you're supposed to do. The unfortunate part that we have to navigate for ourselves is that sense of fear.
And that has to come from your capacity. It cannot be taken away from any agency outside. No influencer can solve it. No product can solve it. No course can solve it. No, nothing can solve it. It can only be solved by your sense of your capacity and you building that, and the alignment that you bring to your own life. And that's the part that I'm evangelizing with all the might that I have.
No, and I think we're gonna have to wrap up quickly soon, but I think that's the sense of fear is, I think a lot about that, certainly based on my experience working in organizations. And so there's so much fear that people have. And so is it fair to say what you're saying is that by first understanding your innate qualities, building the context around those qualities gives you the grounding, gives you the ability to navigate how you cross the water so that the fear subsides? Is it that simple?
Yeah, it's as simple as that. There will be no fear. It's as simple as that. It's an amazing place to be, and because I've experienced it, I can tell you. Which is not to say that you will not find, every day you will have things that you will have to solve and so on, but you won't solve it from a place of fear. You will solve it from a place of confidence.
So I just have I have two more questions. I don't know, Joanna, if there's any questions that you want to serve. I just want to ask Hari one more question. I just lost my train of thought. Any questions, Joanna? I'll think about it.
No, not yet. I'd like to encourage you guys to put your questions in the chat.
So I do have a question, Hari, because earlier you were talking about your experience in your corporate world and seeing the success of people and what was being compromised. Do you think there's value, and then how do you reach younger people to sort of get this before they get to the point of the place where people you were experiencing, where they've had so many years of not feeling the joy? Like, how do we get to the younger generation so that they can be ahead of it versus people who didn't have that opportunity or didn't have the knowledge that you are spreading around?
Yeah, no, I think so there are two parts to it. One, of course, is that do we need to go to the younger people? Oh, absolutely. We need to go to the younger people, because a lot of what we are referring to is actually, just changing a little bit in the way you think about your own life, right? And the earlier you're able to do that and make that a part of yourself, the more valuable it is and more easy it is to actually make that change. So obviously, when you're younger, you're just, you have less of you is formed, and so there's an opportunity to sort of do that earlier. So definitely we should reach out to the younger people. But the difficulty, and there's a challenge, and the challenge is that when you get older is when you start to sense this gap between the fact that you've got success and you haven't got what I call joy. And so the younger folks haven't experienced that contradiction, that paradox. And so it's a little bit of an effort, I suspect, to for them to see what how this will help or what is its meaning. So I think there is a challenge there, and I think we need to figure out a way to help them find that. But one of the things I must also mention is that the current generation of young people are true seekers, in the sense that I see their general orientation to be one of saying, I want to know more. Of course, I mean, all youth are like that, but I think this current generation is even more so. Maybe because they're inundated with so much that they're actually now not satisfied with just more information, but they actually want the true knowledge that sits inside that, which is a wonderful and encouraging thing. So I do believe that we have an opportunity to help them find it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really relevant point, which is when you're young, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't have the same wisdom that you have having experienced and lived 20, 30 years to sort of see what it took to get to that point. I think it's a really relevant insight. Joanna?
Yes, Michael Frank has posted a question, which is, how long does it take to train yourself with this mindset and practices?
That's an excellent question, actually, because the answer to that, of course, is for each person, and there is no one answer to it. I mean, for each person, it depends on the gap that you have, the degree of misalignment that you have, right? So some people, the degree of misalignment. What I mean by that is, what are the essential inequalities that I have, and what's the kind of life I lead? What's the gap? For some people, that gap is not too big, and for some people, the gap is quite big. So if it's not too big, then it's a relatively easier journey. But for people for whom it's a larger gap, there's a longer journey. So that's one part of the answer. The other part of the answer is, we must always remember that in life and this journey called well-being, it is not that we do a set of things and then there is a pot of gold at the end. It's not an outcome. You will realize as you go along that this journey that you're going through of observing yourself, seeing these other gaps, moving towards that, those are all the constituents of joy. Not this final pot of gold that's going to come, because as I keep saying, in life there's only one outcome, and that outcome is death. So life is not about outcomes. Life is about the journey, and so we have to see that as well. Keep that in mind. Saying, don't worry so much about the time. Enjoy the thing that you're doing in that change, and joy will come. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. So the time is what it is, but the joy is in the beginning, and then in the continuing.
Right. So it's like that expression is, it's not the destination, it's the journey getting there.
That's right. It's getting there. That's because
that's
there is no destination.
Yeah. I know we're winding down in time. Any other questions, Joanna?
No, not in the chat, but I do have a question. When I think about alignment, it reminds me about our chakras, or you can call it energy centers. And I can see that one of your tools is about meditation, right, Hari?
Yeah.
Do you think that our alignment in life is related to how our chakras are balanced or energized, and etc.? And if you do use it as a tool in your toolbox for well-being.
So I'll answer that in couple of parts, right? So one is, chakras is a fundamental way of is a depiction of a very fundamental way in which Indic well-being looks at human beings, at beings in general, which is that, and I talked about the dance at the beginning, how human beings are, there's a particular dance and there's a dance of the world. What we are referring to is the dance of energy. that human beings are a dance, one kind of dance of energy, and the rest of the world is also a dance of energy, and sort of synchronizing the two dances of energy is what we're talking about. So when we talk about chakra is just a technique, the translation of that grand idea to technique and method of application is what chakra is. Chakras, for people who are not aware of this, chakra refers to energy flows inside our body. And chakra is the chakra refers to actually the place where multiple energy flows intersect. So, we have energy flows going on in our body, and there are some places in the body where energy flows intersect, and those places are called chakras. So that's the whole science of understanding yourself through understanding the energy flows that you're part of. So we use chakra as one of the methods to help you understand your innate qualities. We use more than one method, but one of the methods we use is actually chakras, which is really to deconstruct the energy flows inside you. More than chakras, we actually help you deconstruct the nature of your energy flow, which is essentially saying this is the kind of dance you're in. So we use that. It's a very profound piece of knowledge. And we use that. We also use two other methods. One other method we use for the composition of the elements that form us as human beings, as beings. So earth, fire, water, and so on and so forth. These are all elements that make us up. And so every human being is a unique combination of those elements. Some have 12% of water and whatever percent, and so on and so forth. So everybody has a certain unique composition. So that's the second method. The energy flows is the first method, and the third method is cosmic influence. Every human being, every being is influenced by the variables of the cosmos. We know that we are all influenced by just the moon and the 15-day cycles of the moon. So when you know at that level, you also know that it's at a grand level. And I must give you a small example of this. I was in one of the most beautiful islands. India has islands called Lakshadweep Islands, and I went there 20 years ago, where it was not opened up, very difficult to get to. It's just north of the Maldives. It's part of the Maldives chain of islands. And I was sitting at the beach with my little children, and we were all sitting there because we were watching crabs come into the shore as the tide was coming in. The crabs were coming in, and as I was sitting with these kids and watching the crabs, it struck me how powerful the cosmos is in life. Because for that little crab, every 24-hour cycle, when the tides turn, which is dependent on what's going on out there in the cosmos, they have to change their life routine to clamber onto the land or go into the water. And we don't realize stuff like that is happening to us. But we don't have the vantage point to see that. And so we think, we are all in control. But the world, the cosmos influences us. So it's these three things. So it's energy, it's composition of elements, and cosmos that influences us. These are the three broad models that we use to help you find out your innate qualities. It's a lot of powerful science. It's taken us a lot of work to dig that out and sort of place it in a contemporary context and make it work. But that's how we use it.
Okay, thank you so much for clarification. And thank you so much for sharing your time and your experience with us. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I loved meeting With and Wonder and Little Life more in depth. See you tomorrow for our next session about the happiness advantage, exploring the science of well-being. And stay tuned to our agenda for the last week of the Workplace Wellbeing Month.
Thank you, Hari. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.